Hi, Jim. How are you today?
Thanks, Roy. Thanks for having me on again.
No worries. Listen, I want to, as always, introduce our viewers to Jim Tuman. Jim Tuman is an icon in the space of I would say, health and wellness for people who, sometimes need a little help. Jim's been doing this for the entire his career, which is expanded for how many decades now, Jim?
I'm going on 6.
So obviously, he's just been amazing, and he's been all over the world, um, talking about these issues that we're talking about. So let's start with today with, I want to talk about men and young men. And the reason I want to talk about men and young men is that the suicide rate for them is, they commit 80% of the suicides. Um, and as obviously as a guy, I think it's easier for us to relate to men, um, and also as a father, of a son and daughters. But, you know, Jim, why do you think that, it's 80% for men and young men? Why do you think that number is so high?
Um, Boys and men carry 2 bricks. I mean, think of it in these terms. One is that they have to, they can't cry. It's a negative situation that over the years, real men don't cry.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that. I
Wait,
think
there's one more brick, so you
sure,
can
sure.
you can then answer. And the second thing is they're asked to be macho. They're asked, to be that, strength that is supposed to be in them. And when they don't feel that strength is when they feel that they're less than. And when they feel less than, it progresses and they take their lives.
So you think that society puts an additional stress onto men as compared to women?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because society from the dawn, men were always the gatherers. Women were always the nurturers, and the gatherers were the strength of the family. And it has progressed from that point on to today, where it still is that same, sexist situation that exists. Because I know, you know, more women than I know men that have more strength and more conviction and are very successful people. So, this is something that's been brought on through the generations, and hopefully we can do something about it. But as far as taking their lives, this is a great thing because they carry this load.
Yeah, yeah. And so you think that the load is just a brutal load?
Well, it's a load that is expected. And when you have a load that's expected, you can't just use the energy to dismiss it because it's expected by society that men notorious are, you know, they are the strength, and back to prehistoric times, they're the gatherers. We still have this mindset, and women have been, spending, generations now trying to break that scenario.
So they're trying to soften them up, is what you're saying?
I don't think softening up is necessarily the right term. What they want to do is they want to compete at the same level. They want to be able to get, the same consideration as men. So boys they see this, and then they want to act out these expectations of what boys and men do. And it's a sad thing because unfortunately, it's not true.
For sure. And so for these young guys, like I notice having, a son and daughters, I always notice that my son is really more, he's always concerned about his future, always concerned. I mean, my conversations with him, and, he graduated from an amazing university. He, at 22 years old, an amazing, job. And I'm sitting here going to myself, man, he is so laser focused and like, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. And then I look at my daughters and it's kind of like, they don't have that same intensity and fire. And
The breadwinner mindset of men is, controls their destiny. And in that breadwinner mindset, people expect, like, I'm the oldest of, my siblings, and it was expected of me to go out in the world and to be, a doctor or a lawyer or accountant or, whatever, where I would be at the top of my game in prestige. And a lot of times men are expected at that prestige level to be at the top of their game. And what your son is experiencing is, what society out there looks at. And it's not new. It's unfortunate that, women still are fighting to compete. And unfortunately, I wish that they would work on an even playing with men, but there's still this perception.
So now when we go to a previous podcast where we talk about how, here the everybody has family issues, right? That lead to depression and suicide and bullying. Then you go to the school part, which has the same format. Now you're saying for boys, there's an additional part because things are expected of them. And for women to look at this, I don't want women to look at this and go, oh, this is just not fair. And I just had a conversation before we started this with my daughter, and at her university, it's, what month is this? June. Her rent is due, and this is due, and that's due. And she doesn't go to my wife. She comes to me. My oldest daughter needs something. She comes to me. So, I know that there's always this added stress where it's like, I know of the car insurances, I know the car payments, I know the rent payments, I know all of the stuff that has to happen. And, my wife doesn't have a clue, it's like, so I do understand that, but I don't want them to think that, trust me, I didn't sign up for it. If my wife was to take care of it and pay for it all, I'd be thrilled. So I don't think that that's the component of it. I think though that, these young men, like you said, there's so much pressure on them, so much pressure. And here's the part that to me even makes it even worse. If you take a look at things in society today, okay, what you have to provide for your children to succeed. Like I look at my son, tutors, right? The sports stuff that he did, more tutors, SAT, and I'm not throwing this into the boys camp alone. I'm saying that boys and girls, that it's expensive. So if your parents don't have the tools to give you those things to compete with, you're even at a bigger disadvantage than before. So, I do see that. And again, we're focusing on young men. So somehow we have to let young men know it's okay. And I can tell you one thing I tell my son all the time. Every single time I talk to him, are you having fun? Are you having fun? And I tell my daughter the same thing. Are you having fun? Because
unfortunately, a lot of I started a program back around, I don't know, maybe 50 years ago. And it was called FUN, FUN, and it was called Financial Understanding Now. And I worked with the Secretary of the Treasury, and we went around the country and we did seminars specifically for women who, unfortunately, when their spouse, many of them had, when their spouse passed away at a young age, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know where the money was. They didn't know where the bank accounts were. They didn't know how to be able to pay the bills because it was all taken over by men. And we wanted women to go on an equal plane. And the idea for my program came out of a friend of mine whose husband died at 33 and left her with 3 children.
Wow.
And she was lost. She was completely lost. And a shrewd attorney wound up taking all her money.
Wow.
So this is what is happening in this culture. And again, we're making great progress. I feel strong about what women are doing. Women, are the heads of countries. Women, are the heads of banks. Women are the heads of financial institutions. And women are the head of many, many top, companies. So you've got this opportunity. What boys are still dealing with is antiquated thinking. And so by you sharing with them, and by every dad and mom sitting down with their son, not their daughter, their son, and saying, we're not asking for perfection. We're not looking for you to go out in the world and, to do this incredible things. We just want you to feel the best about yourself at whatever you choose to do, and enjoy the run. Because
no question, Jimmy, and that's 100% from any parent's perspective. I mean, any normal parent, right? But the second that they walk out that door, because you're not with your kids as much as they're out there, okay? I was very close with my kids. They were always at my house, all their friends, all the time. But the funny thing about it is that you got to remember one thing too. The minute that they get outside, it's all about perfection. It is all about perfection. In sports, if you want to succeed, to have that popularity, sports is perfection, right? So they go to do this perfection. Then you get to the next part, and these girls go to the websites, the TikToks and the reels. These girls that they're showing that you're getting millions of views, they're perfection. I mean, the workout, the makeup, the hair. I mean, so the hard part is like, how do you tell everybody to have this balance, right? The balance in life that you need to. Those people that are those.
I want to encourage people. Look this up. I used it in my goals program for a long time. It was called The Station. And what it was it's not the destination. The true joy of life is the trip. So if you create this great trip, and I've been very fortunate because I'm, 90% child. So there's this child in me that comes out and just loves the energy. I have the most unusual hobby of anybody you'll ever know. I crash parades in different costumes. And I have all these people, hundreds of people sometimes come with me to crash a parade. And they think it's the best day of their lives. But it's the child in everybody. And the child in all of us is the best gift we give ourselves. There's a boxing match between, adults and children. And the adult in everybody is the most, rational, the most responsible, the most predictable. The child is the most spontaneous and the most honest and the most real. And so the child is in both of us, the adult is in both of us. Allow the child occasionally to win, because if the adult wins all the time, that's when you get messed up.
So the first program you talked about, the financial program one, I'd like to make sure that we send me some information on that, because I think that that's important, right? Financial is so important. The second one, the second program about, the inner fun. I mean, I'm all my kids always call me a child. So I think that that's, two components. I think that we have to open up the doors for people to come in, right? That's what the whole premise of this is to have people come in from everywhere and know that when they're around other people and getting support and kind words and comments, and then we can have these days where we start to talk about the finances and being the inner child, winning some of these battles. Because you're right, some point in time, man, all of these things bombarding you constantly, it's too much for anybody. So I think that for the young men to realize that you got to have
both men, both boys and girls.
No question.
Young men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
here's the challenge that they live with. A lot of kids, and I've spoken to 2 million, as you've often said, and more. And I've worked with suicide issues for 50 years. One of the things that a lot of kids deal with on a day-to-day basis is the expectations of their parents. In addition, they have the expectations at school, they have expectations in the work world, they have expectations in the sporting world, but they have these expectations. If they have them at home, kids have a tendency to fall apart, because if I have a great friend of mine who's in Stockton, California, who has 4 children, and each one is a brainiac. Each one went to incredible schools, but their oldest went to Johns Hopkins on a free ride. That's how brilliant he was. And 3 years ago, they found him hanging from a ceiling fan. And the reason being was that the expectations of people create a lot of this pain, and kids feeling like they can't measure up, and they feel like they just can't compete and everything. The highest rate of suicide in our country for colleges is in the Ivy schools. I've spoken at 8 out of the 10 Ivy schools, and they lead the country in suicide. And this is why, because when they come to an Ivy school, they usually have to be at the top of their class in their high school. And they get to an Ivy school, and there's a gradation span from the top of the grades to the bottom. And if they're at the bottom, they're thinking, I'm a failure. When in reality, they're getting an education, and they're going out in the world with an Ivy League degree that opens doors, but they don't see it. They just see the gradation part. They just see their part in that model. And this is sad, because we're asking more of kids than sometimes they can give.
So let me ask you a quick question. I'm very competitive. Okay. I'm very competitive. I think that I'm pretty balanced in what I do. I exercise, I don't know, 5, 6 days a week. I eat junk, 1, 2 days out of the week. Um, I argue with my kids 2 days of the week, and then I love them, 5 days of the week. Um, I think that I'm pretty balanced. How do you get that balance? and I suck at it from what they tell me. So, how is everybody supposed to find this balance? These kids that, want great things out of life, because listen, you got to be a supporter in a family. Got to be.
One word on this, Roy, and I hope that the viewers are listening to this insight. One word: joy. Joy is the balance. And I was speaking at this high school, and this girl who was valedictorian was suicidal. Take a guess, and the viewers will be blown out of their minds. Take a guess why she is suicidal. She was valedictorian.
She didn't feel like she was good enough.
Down one or two more levels.
It's so frustrating for me, Jimmy.
All right, I'm gonna answer it for you. She got a B in high school. She got a B in high school. She covered up. Her dad was a doctor. She's in pre-med. She didn't want to show her report card. She thought she was a failure. And I had to work with her for 3 years to convince her that joy is the answer.
Okay, so then joy's the answer. How much of it would you say, from her standpoint side, could been a little bit of mental illness?
No, it's the perfection part of human beings.
Okay.
He wanted the perfection, and I took her to one parade, and she got in the parade, and she told me honestly she had never been to a parade, and she was like dancing and giggling and laughing. That is the key to a balanced life, because if you take life so serious and that you put up what your standards are of perfection, you are surely never going to make it, and equally think of yourself as a failure.
Wow. Jimmy, I like the two programs that you were talking about. We need to figure out a way to start to implement some of these things, so that, one, we can start networking. Obviously, finances is a big deal. That's a great one. Number two, I'd love to figure out a way to get, 1 million people to run into parades, because I think it sounds like it is a lot of fun.
I mean, I've done more than 150 parades all over the world.
and that's the part that I think people need to be able to laugh at themselves.
I have to tell you, I have vice presidents of major corporations that come in these parades with me, and they think it's the best day of their lives because because they're free. They're not encumbered under expectation of what they're doing. They can be as crazy as they want to be, and they just have a ball, and they come year after year after year. It isn't like they just do it once. And the idea of joy in our lives is at a minimal, because you get up in the morning and you're facing all of these challenges and all of this pain and all of this fear and all the rest of the things. When do you ever experience laughter, and joy. And if you don't experience it, you're missing out. And unfortunately, and this is an absolute, because I work with addictions all the time. People create addiction to numb that fear that they can't be joyful. And they think, oh, if I get drunk, then I can be joyful. If I get high, I can be joyful. If I stick a needle in my arm, I can be joyful. And unfortunately, that is artificial joy. The real joy is just doing it. I mean, marriage, you know what? So many people have said the most important gift in marriage is making your spouse laugh. Making your spouse laugh. Because I try and make my wife laugh every day. And my wife fights me. I'm up to 4 million yes dears now in my marriage. So this is what is a necessary element to the balance of life.
So finding that inner child and letting it run.
Absolutely. I mean, the child can come out in any way you want. And it could come out. I mean, a lot of people that have stiff jobs and have stiff expectations in their jobs. I've watched them sometimes during my assemblies come up and make everybody laugh by being foolish, by admitting to, craziness in their life. And this is what I did years ago. And this is what happened. And kids are laughing at the principal who is saying this. And they're loving him more because it's what they love to do and what they want from adults. They don't want from adults this constant, discussion on, what is important in your life and what you need to do and the criticism, the rest of the stuff. They want to hear some joy.
Okay. So let's do this, Jimmy. I want you to send me those two things, the two programs, because I'd like to start to implement some strategies onto those online. Number two, we need to figure out a way to bring out the ability for people to just laugh, be happy at certain silly, crazy, stupid events.
I mean, the best way to do this, and it's, I've had an eclectic life. I mean, some of it, some of you don't. I was a circus clown. I was a rodeo rider. I was a symphony musician. I was a roadie for Journey. I was a chauffeur for Peter, Paul, and Mary. I sang backup with Freddie Cannon doing 50s rock and roll. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, it's as long as my arm and everything. And the child in me was what fostered doing these things. I mean, being a clown at the Shrine Circus, I discovered that clowns had more addictions than anybody else in the circus, that people were afraid of clowns. And equally important, I watched clowns. I did a whole thing where I got out of a car with 12 other clowns, and it was a dentist. I had these big pliers, and I would pull out a tooth, for everybody. But anyway, so I was fortunate to create this child, and I came from family that they weren't children. My dad was very straight-laced, and nothing could make him laugh. And I used to take him because I belonged to Society of American Magicians. I used to take him to magic shows. And I would ask the magicians I knew to take an egg out of his ear, and he would start to laugh. That's great memories that I have of my dad, that he laughed. He laughed out loud. And he wasn't all about like, you have to do this and you have to make this happen and the rest of the things. It can be enjoying the ride. I will send you a copy of the station, and I will send you, and equally important, I believe in goals. I believe in goals. You're asking for solutions. I believe in goals. I I I met and was mentored by the foremost goals person in the world, John Goddard. When he was um, when he was 18, he wrote in Life magazine. They did an article. He wrote 126 goals of what he wanted to accomplish, and there were all kinds of crazy goals. I mean, you name it, there were crazy goals. And for Life magazine went under, and when they came back after 25 years, they did an article on John and asked him, how has your life been? And he said, better than anything I could have imagined. And they said, what was the secret sauce? The secret sauce was that he had goals. And the goals weren't just make $1 million. The goals were, you know, catching a 5-pound lobster and high jumping 6 feet and landing a plane on a battleship and translating the Bible and climbing 5 mountains and the rest of the stuff. And he lived a full and rich life because of the goals. And I encourage people to set goals and to create their life in balance, because that's what my goals program is all about. Is I share with people, the happiest people I know, Roy, are in balance.
And Jimmy, that's a great point, because when you take a look at it, though, how can any child be in balance if their home life is a disaster? How can they have balance if they're bullied at school? I mean, I think that there is a way that you have to give them certain strategies as well too to balance it out. What I mean by that is that, if you're overweight, you have to balance out your food and your exercise, right? You have to do both of them. So I think that some of the things that we have to do is help people balance and understand, like, sometimes you got to say F it to some of the things that, bother you. And that's a balance too, right?
It is a balance. However, not only just tell them, take them by the hand and show them and give them places where there is access to joy. Take them, take them to a fun house. Take them to, in California, there's Magic Mountain where kids can be kids, even
Yeah,
though they're adults.
but I think
Those are the types of things that you could do.
well, I think one of the things that you just mentioned though too is that, I never thought of this ever. And you said, hey, joy, having fun, being a kid, doing silly things, and it's like, wow, it just set off a light in my head. Like, it makes you smile when you said that you actually rush parades. Like, what the heck is that? Like, it's insane, right? How great is that? I mean, it just put a big smile on my face. So I think that there's a way where you kind of got to push people into these things, and I think that's
it's amazing to me how many people want to be in a parade with me. I mean, I'm talking about over the years, several thousand people have contacted me. When are you doing your next parade? When can I be a part of that? What can I wear? What can I do? And it's amazing to me that we don't do this joy. We get up every day and we're in pain from the time we get up to the time we go back to sleep.
Yeah. Okay. So let's work on those few things. Let's stick back to where the guys that need help reach out. And again, we're not just saying guys, we're only using the statistic that 80% to 20% women. So please, we don't want anybody to take it as, we're
you don't want to be a sexist.
Yeah, we're definitely not a sexist. But again, let's put some components to where people can reach out. And I'd really like to explore these opportunities, Jimmy, to start having people come to things where they can come and have fun.
I mean, Roy, it's all around. There are all these different places where you can have joy and everything. However, they're only, maybe once every month, people go and they go someplace that, that where joy is available. However, you can make joy happen in the house. I watch these America's Funniest Home Videos, and they're, some of them are just off the charts and ridiculous, but everybody's laughing in the room at people, so they're taking pictures of people who fall down or tumble over or do something, and everybody's laughing, and they've got their video on, and then they give them money for the best video of the craziest things that are happening. So that's a reality that we can create.
Well, but I think that one of the things too, though, is that when you say it's in the home, sometimes it's not in the home. Sometimes they need to get out of it. Sometimes they need to get away.
Absolutely. But wherever you find it, wherever people find it, is where you need to be.
Yeah, but listen, what you just said today with those parades, if you never would have said that, I mean, that's like the coolest thing ever. And I never would have thought of that in a million years. So now it opens your mind to doing more things that people can do. But like they used to do those mob flashes or the flash things where everybody would go out and start dancing at the mall, and they would put it out there for people to go.
Oh, no, they did it in New York where I was in it.
Yeah. So now we need to start doing stuff like that where people can come and do those types of things. So listen, we had a time limit here, so I want to respect the time. And so let's do this. Send me the information on that. Again, we're going to put links for people to get help from and also to reach out to us anytime.
I'm going to send you the station, which is when I first read it, I thought to myself, I wish I had said these things, because it's phenomenal. It was written, I don't know, 75 years ago, but it's all about, accessing joy, and that the trip, as opposed to the destination, is the best gift we give ourselves. Is the true joy of life is the trip.
Well, Jimmy, I appreciate that. Let's we'll continue this again on our next episode. And until then, Jimmy, thank you so much for everything. And we'll start putting some more action into play to start getting people on board to start seeing joy in their life.
I mean, skip. If you're going someplace and you're walking, skip.
Yeah, but see
skip yourself and watch how many people are looking at you and saying in their head, I wish I could do that.
But the difference is if you can grab their hand and make them skip with you.
100%.
All right, that's our goal. We'll have 1 million people skipping, all right?
All right.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Take care. We love you. Stay well and be kind to yourself, okay?
Take care, buddy. Thank you.
Bye-bye.